Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 232 of the Sticks and the Six podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co-host, Peter Barricchini. And Peter, well, I had one heck of a week, and we'll get into it in a little bit here. But before we do, how you doing this week, my friend?
Doing great, man. Yeah, I don't know if it can live up to the week that you had, especially recently. We are going to talk about your little... a little bit of an excursion that you went on. You know, I know you're doing something with the Easter Seals with your little charity work for that. But other than that, man, yeah, it's been really quiet here. I'm just getting really sick of the hot and cold weather going back and forth nonstop. I just want whatever it's going to be. And seeing as we're getting in the summer right now, I just want double-digit temperatures. I don't want anything else. I'm already getting a little fed up, getting a little sick right now, but just got to power through it right now.
Yeah, it's time to get rid of that sweater weather. Get into the nice cooler spring sunny days. But yeah, as most of you know, if you've watched the podcast before, you know, like especially in the last two seasons here, we've devoted ourselves to trying to give back in any way that we can. So those around the Leafs know that every year they do an Easter Seals skate for kids with physical disabilities, and they raise money for Easter Seals, and anybody can get involved. It was I know some people that have done it over multiple years. They get out there, they get a skate in at the now Ford Performance Center in Etobicoke. And so this year I decided, you know what the hell, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna give it a go, and set my goal at the base $350. And what happens is essentially you raise the $350, you get a chance to go out and skate on the Ford Performance Center, and then some of the Leafs will come out and skate with you. Some of them will just stand there and sign autographs and whatnot. So shout out first of all to everybody who did donate, and everybody who did I mentioned every time I was on, every dollar counts, and every little bit that you can give back to anybody is in some way a good way of trying to give back to the community that might not be as beneficial or well off as we are on a day-to-day basis. And so I did this, one, to give back, but two, to get the opportunity to kind of experience this too, right? Because it's something that not everybody gets to experience. So you go in, essentially you choose which rink you're going to be at, either rink 1 or rink 2. You choose that ahead of time. You don't know which players are going to go. It's following a practice. They divvy the team up, and you're kind of with whoever you're with, right? So going in with no expectations. It's the first time I've been on a pair of skates in probably 3 years since I tried to teach my son to skate. So the ankles at my age are getting a little bit weak, but nonetheless, I was able to stay up and not have a fall, which is always good. Not taking out it.
That's a plus, especially in front of NHLers, man. You don't wanna fall flat on your ass there, right?
Not taking out any knees, buddy. Not taking out any knees. But when I first got to the Ford Performance Center, the Scepters were actually having a practice as well. So I almost ran into Emma Malte, which would have been pretty neat, given the fact that she had been on the show. That was pretty cool to see. And then from there, I chose rink 1. So again, went on. I was skating around, started getting busy on the ice, doing my thing, and then the players started coming on, which was a pretty neat experience. One, to see the kids, how excited they got, the ones that were there, all waiting at the doorway, pumped to get their helmets and sticks and whatever signed, and that was a really cool moment. So that was something that I was looking forward to. And then we started seeing some of the players come out. So we had Philip Myers was on the rink, got a chance to talk to him. And I'm not going to lie, I shamelessly plugged the Sticks and the Six podcast like it was my job. Like I was telling you pre-show here that I got this big 3x5 foot flag that I'm ready to put up as a backdrop to this podcast, hopefully at some point down in the basement. And I had them all just sign it in a silver Sharpie. And I was like, guys, this is going to be the backdrop for the Sticks and the Six podcast. If you have time, make sure you tune in. And like some of them brush you off, like whatever.
Yeah.
You're like the lone old guy here trying to get autos and stuff like that. So I was like, whatever. So Phil Myers comes out pretty neat. Obviously, a black ace at times this season. And then I saw Nick Robertson come out, which was pretty cool. Very genuine dude, man. Like I tried to have a conversation with all of them as much as I could. Some of them, like I said, not as responsive, but Joseph Wall came out. He was on the bench just signing autographs, so I got a chance to talk with him a little bit.
You're like Wall, no matter what situation that he's in, whether it's press, off the ice, whatever, he is just the most nicest guy you will ever meet.
So really genuine with the kids, a little off put with a 40-year-old coming up with a flag to sign. But granted, it's you're kind of put in this limelight and you got a lot to deal with. There's a lot going on. Pictures are coming. You're smiling with everybody. So I had those guys. Easton Cowan came out, so there's that London connection. I kind of talked to him about London.
Nice.
Mentioned the podcast. Obviously, he was kind of like intrigued, given that started in the basement of some London guy's house. So that kind of was interesting. And then Dakota Joshua was there. When I mentioned the pod to him, he was like genuinely intrigued. Like I mentioned the name Sticks in the Six. He's like, Sticks in the Six. He's like, man, that's a sick name. I'm like, yeah, that's like fun. We've been going on for 6 years and Toronto base. I'm like, man, you got to tune in. He's like, man, if I get time, Andrew, I'm gonna take a listen. So I was like, okay, that's pretty sick.
Hey.
So I kept going around the boards. Your boy William Villeneuve likes to go by Will.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Good to know. Good to know.
I will say, as he was signing the flag, I told him, I said, this is the backdrop for the Sticks and Six podcast. And I said, my co-host, he would be telling me right now to tell you it's about damn time you got called up.
Yes.
And so his response to that was like, yeah, hopefully I'll get into a game soon. So obviously he was reassigned this morning, which kind of sucks, but
yep, we will get to that. I have strong feelings about that.
Yeah. And then of course, Luke Hames was there as well. Another guy that deserves a call up in some time at this point in the season where the Leafs are at. And then, going around the circle there, I got a chance to talk to Benoit Gruel as well. He was there. Jake McCabe was there. And then standing in the middle of the rink with no line was Brandon Carlo. So I skated up to Brandon Carlo and I'm like, hey, man, there's no line. I got to come talk to you. I'm like, I'm Andrew. I'm a host of the Six in the Six podcast. You're signing the new backdrop for it. And he's like, man, this podcast thing's taken off. Like, how long you guys been doing it? Told him 6 years. Started in the middle of COVID. Gave him the name. He's like, man, I got to listen to this. Like, it sounds like a pretty sick podcast. So
we got DJ and Carlo on board possibly.
Like, I'm feeling like there's some smoke being blown up my ass here. But, like, if even one of them tunes in for 2 minutes, maybe they're listening right now. Hey. Who knows? But if one of them listens for 2 minutes or, like, we go out and reach out to them and say, hey, man, I met you at the Easter Seals thing. You want to come on the pod? At least they got a face to the name now. And yeah, it was JT was there. I told you that. Matthew Nyes was there. I got a chance to talk to JT about how I played lacrosse with him and his cousin back in the day in Oakville.
Nice.
Small world story. And then of course, the last one I spoke to was Matthias Michelli, and I skated up to Matthias Michelli and I told him about the podcast. Same line I opened with everybody and said, we got this the new backdrop, what have you. And I told him, I said, when you came to Toronto, the first thing we did was we talked about the acquisition of you and what you're going to bring to the team and what what you didn't get an opportunity to do in Utah and what have you. And I let him know. I said, hey, one of the guys one of the people that subscribed shortly after we talked about you on that episode was an Antonia Michelli.
Yes, and I remember that.
And she's still subscribing. So Antonia, if you ever watch this episode, shout out to you.
Big shout out.
And he's like, that's my mom. And he's like,
so there we go.
She's kind of like that. She's super proud. She's
that's awesome.
She'll promote anything that has to do with me. And he kind of chuckled and we had a good laugh about it. And, it was just like humanizing these guys. And like, it was a pretty amazing experience. And then just to see the way that they work with the kids that are on there, like there's some sled hockey folks on there. And it's pretty cool to watch them go out there and skate. And, you gain a huge respect. And I'll tell you this, I'm not one to gloat or or brag about, small good deeds, but I went in there with like the flag and then a couple hockey cards that I would like to get signed by players if they were there. And I was standing in line for John Tavares, and there was this little kid in front of me with his dad, and they were talking, and his dad said, "Oh, you should have brought your hockey card." And sure enough, I had a John Tavares base card in my pocket that I was going to have him sign. And so, anyways, I gave it to the kid.
Nice.
And the excitement on his face, man, like that's the stuff that I'm talking about. Like that's why these events are so big for teams to do, so big for the Leafs to do.
This is why the hockey community comes together, and it's important to see.
Yeah,
and it's great to see regardless.
And I watched this kid go up, and I watched him get it signed. And after that, I had a Leafs puck in my pocket that I was going to get signed at some point. And after I got off the ice, there's a girl sitting there with her dad and her mom, and I just gave her the puck and said, if you get an opportunity to get signed, it's all yours. And it's one of those things, right? It's just one of those things. But anyways, it was a great experience. It was certainly something that I really enjoyed. I think I'm going to do it again next year. I'm going to try and my daughter wants to learn to skate, and she said she wants to come with me, so we'll try and raise double of what I raised this year. And it's all just to give back to the community and try and see what we can do to help raise awareness for Easter seals and all that kind of stuff. But it was a hell of an experience. Great way to shamelessly plug the podcast, and hopefully we got DJ and Carlo on board to maybe tune into some episodes and maybe get the bond at some point. So if you're listening, DJ, Brandon, we'd love to get you on. It was very nice to meet you, and hopefully we get you as a friend of the show for the Sticks and the Six podcast at some point.
Absolutely.
Gary, I was thinking this the same. I was thinking this too. Maybe the new regime will allow the Leafs to talk to local media and podcasts. Maybe they'll let us in the room. Maybe they'll let us do a live show at Scotiabank Arena sometime.
Would love to do that. I know we've been talking about getting out there to do the live shows, the live podcast thing again, like we did at Bottom Line when we first started off, coming out of the pandemic as well. Those are fun times, just hanging out at the bar, watching the game afterwards. But if there's a possibility of doing that at a Leaf game, oh man, you can rest assured we will put our names in there.
Yeah, I will say this too, Gary. Given that it's $900 for a kid to wave the flag in the opening ceremonies, there's a very unlikely chance that we ever get to do a show with the Leafs. But
I was about to say, some of those prices.
That's not including your ticket to the game. So you have to have a ticket to the game plus the $900 to wave the flag for a kid to wave the flag.
The least they could have done is, okay, well, $900 is just ridiculous as well, because then you got to, let's say you don't live in the city of Toronto, you got to pay for possibly transportation, a hotel. Again, you just mentioned the tickets right there. You would think that maybe they would help with the cost because they are a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise, help you out, or even just make this a free event for a kid and just be like, hey, we're going to do a contest. We're going to pull one kid from a minor hockey team, club, whatever, to come out. We will pay you to come out, to come on the ice, wave the flag, and be around the Maple Leafs. $900 for that, man? That's just really sad. It really is.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, if anybody knows out there, I'm curious what like Montreal charges for, like, they have that kid skate around and then
the torch,
park the flag in center ice and whatever. I'm genuinely curious to see what they charge, if they charge or what have you. Because, I mean, you talk about a franchise that likes to give back, and the players are fantastic for it. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a conglomerate greed that exists within the franchise. So
everywhere. Really.
Anyways, we're gonna get to the Leafs. Obviously, the biggest news is not their play. The biggest news as of right now is what's going on with the organization and their head office. And right now, they've hired a firm to help with the search for GM or president of hockey ops. And I don't know if you caught this on Overdrive, but Hayes and O-Dog are genuinely disturbed by this. And I'm kind of on board with it, even though they didn't give me a shout out for my byline. I will say this: I'm genuinely perturbed that this is even a thing, because I have to ask the question: if Keith Pelly is so involved and claims to be so involved with the organization, is his job, and he's qualified to fire Brad Treliving. What makes him qualified or unqualified to do the hiring on his own. That we need to, again, use more money, more of this that we get from kids who want to wave the flag, to hire a firm to hire a president of hockey ops and what have you. I want to get your take on this hiring of an outside firm to do the hiring within.
Like, I don't have a problem with it because a lot of places do need outside help. Like, let's face it. But when, like I said, you're a multi-billion-dollar franchise. You're basically one of the top 2 teams in the league in terms of revenue and profit. You're telling me that you, as a CEO and of the team, can't go out and do the job search yourself? I mean, I understand you want to outsource, you want to get some help at a different angle and point of view. Yeah, that happens. But, and it's kind of goes, I'm going to tie in Keith Pelly's like press conference when he fired Trey Living, where he's just like, I'm not a hockey guy. Like, this is what we're going to pay the hockey guys to do or whatever. If you're not a hockey guy, then why are you in charge of this team and outsourcing because you don't know exactly how to approach the situation? Does that make sense? Like, it kind of feels like, yeah, you're in charge of this team. You don't have the hockey knowledge like others do. You need some help, great, but it comes to a point where you got to have some sense of what you're doing. You got to have a sense of the direction of where you want to go with this team, whether you know the game or not. You need it. He already talked about it. He wants to have a data-centric, a data-centric guy that's basically in tune with the game right now. Great. You're telling me you need help with an outside firm with that, and you can't do it yourself based on like the qualifications or resumes of some of the guys that's being rumored in the mill right now, whether it's probably not going to be a Doug Armstrong, but let's say a Sonny Mehta from the Florida Panthers, which the firm that the Leafs hired, Mehta's also a client of Neil Glassberg.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
CJ did mention that as well. I there's probably going to be a conflict of interest there. There probably is a conflict of interest if Mehta does get the job, but I just think right now to go that route of a firm when you should at least have a general idea on how you want to approach a team, and you want to surround yourself with great hockey minds, you should at least know who the top ones are, and you don't need a firm for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the fact that they're tied to Sonny Mehta, and we'll talk to that in just a sec via Canada. I think too many people to make one decision is too many hands in the cookie jar. I'll debate that. Identifying a qualified GM doesn't require a hockey guy. That's potentially, yeah. But I mean, you go back to this, and Jonas Siegel said it on Overdrive. Go back the last 20 years. Who's your best GM that the Leafs have had? It's Kyle Dubas, basically, an analytical guy that you really didn't give the support to and let go. And we shit on Dubas a little bit for some of the contracts he handed out and some of the handlings of players, but
he took some risks that really generally were worth taking on at that point when he was a GM.
Yeah, no,
he needed
absolutely
to clear up some of the mistakes that Lou Lamoriello did. I mean, the Patrick Marleau contract. Everyone basically shits on him for giving up that first round pick, but he had no choice but to get rid of that contract, and he still managed to get one after. So it's like if he fixes a solution or if he tries to rectify a solution, he gets something in return and he tries to build on that at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say this. Like, I've said it from the beginning. I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you've got too many people trying to make a decision. It was the same when Shanahan was there, and you had to go through the CEO of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment and through the board and to make a trade call was just it was asinine. I've said this before, maybe not on this podcast, but in casual hockey conversations, that until the Leafs are genuinely majority owned by an individual rather than a conglomerate, this team is not going to win a cup.
Yeah.
Because what Rogers, and let's not forget, is it Bell now that owns the majority? I think, did Rogers sell out?
I can't remember who holds the most stakes right now.
Because
I'm trying to dig that up right now.
Regardless, while you're looking that up, the conversation here is that you've got a conglomerate that owns a sports franchise or
Yeah,
multiple sports.
Rogers is the majority owner of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment.
Now, Rogers also has a huge NHL deal with the league.
And they put a hell of a lot of money into the Toronto Blue Jays.
So at this point, the conversation is easy. You can hire anybody, and you're not going to win. You're not going to win dick, because at the end of the day, with the Leafs being owned by a conglomerate, thank you, Gary, 80% Rogers.
Yeah.
When the Leafs are owned by a conglomerate such as Rogers, who also has their hands in the pot with the NHL, they're getting this no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
They're making that green no matter what. They're happy. Their shareholders are content. You don't have to be a playoff team. You don't have to be a Stanley Cup winning team. You don't have to be a second round team. And we talk about why it's such a ghost town in there. It's because it's a franchise that's owned by a conglomerate. They put butts in the seat in that lower bowl. You know, it's business clients up the wahoo. The true fan, the kids that were at that Easter Seals skate can't afford to go to a game.
Yeah.
Let alone pay the $900 to wave a goddamn flag in the air. So the conversation about a GM search and a president of hockey ops, and we will talk about that briefly here, is that that conversation is null and void. It's a moot point until the Leafs are majority owned by an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Jacobs family in Boston.
Ryan Smith in Utah right now.
And look what he's done with that franchise.
I was about to say, that's the way to go about it. This is a guy that's actually passionate about what he's doing.
Vegas, Foley
exactly.
in Vegas.
These are passionate guys. And at the same point, what's the one thing, like we see, like Ryan Smith, he's basically in casual gear nonstop. He's basically relating to the everyday fan. What do we get to see every single day? Suits in the lower bowl that don't even cheer for a goal. And I'm glad right now that during this stretch that the Maple Leafs tickets and the lower bowls is kind of dead at this point, because now you get to see who the real fans are. And if they're not going to give you money for that product on the ice, maybe you got to change it up. You got to lower your prices. You got to do what's right. You got to put the fans that actually care in those seats.
The problem, though, is that they're making that money and they're getting those seats filled.
They're going to do it regardless.
Until something changes.
That's just me being wishful thinking kind of thing, right?
Yeah. It's so, I mean, that's another conversation. But I'm curious, anybody who is watching right now, what your view is on a conglomerate-owned franchise. Because, again, you go back to like Mark Cuban with the Dallas Mavericks. He's a guy who cared. He was there every day. He was there every game. He was putting his all into the franchise itself. You go to the Illiches in Detroit and what they've done for the Detroit franchises. That's a group that wants to see the best. You talk about the Buss family in LA with the Lakers and what they've been able to do for that franchise. When you are majority owned by an individual, their care, and I keep going back to Vegas because we mock Vegas for trading away all their assets. I mean, let's go back to when they had Nick Suzuki and they traded him for Max.
We mock them for a lot of things.
The fact is, they've got an owner who gives a shit and wants to win now, right? And they roll over first round picks, they roll over all their assets, but they continue to maintain consistency in terms of being a franchise that is a capable NHL franchise. What happened in Toronto this year was abysmal. And I'm not going to sit here and be naive to the point of many people out there and many people that just love to hate the Leafs and say that it's because Marner left. This is far beyond Marner leaving the franchise. There's a problem within that organization, and it starts from the top down. It's not just the players. It's not just your GM. It's not just your coach. There's a problem organizationally that is causing this ripple effect throughout the remainder of the team. So in saying that, I truly do believe that you need to find a way to pull back from the conglomerate and try and drive that individual ownership home. V of Canada, I doubt you'll find one individual who could buy the Leafs with will slash ticket prices as a, no. I'm not saying
Like I
it's a
said, that was
realistic. I'm not saying it's a realistic hope. I'm saying
yeah.
that's
It's
when you're
wishful
going to win a
thinking on
cup.
my part there. Yeah.
I don't think you win a cup until you find a way to address the home atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. Gary, what about the Jerry Jones and the Cowboys? Look,
I think that's just a lost cause there.
Gary, I'm a Giants fan, first of all. So,
I got nothing to say. I'm a Pats fan, so
the Cowboys have great teams. They just have it's a one and done in the playoffs, and that's a one and done. Anything can happen. Look at March Madness. You can have a 16 beat a 1. They have, and football's a different game, but Jerry puts his all into that team, man. Jerry gives a shit about that team. So V of Canada says go Buccaneers.
Go Bucks.
We got a whole plethora of NFL fans here today, but I think there's efforts to generate a winner with the Leafs, but the team falls short. We've lost to Cup champions recently. The Leafs aren't the Pirates.
And again, that is fair. Like last year, we did lose to the eventual Cup champs.
We have how many years out of the last whatever, right?
It's just the fact that last year is something that should have been built upon, but the last 9 years has been utter failure, regardless of who we faced. That's the issue. I think it's not just last year; it's 9 years of utter failure where we had a chance to go deep and we didn't.
It's going back to the times where you had a culture in the room, and you had the Gary Roberts, and you had the Steve Sullivans, and you had the
Darcy Tucker,
Steve
the
Thomases,
Brian
and the Darcy Tuckers, the Shane Corsons, the guys that laid it all out and played a type of game that was undisputably a strong effort. You don't have that anymore. It's starting to become a league of prima donnas, and don't get me wrong, there's still players out there that have that mentality of going out and trying to put it all out there to win, but it's getting harder and harder. Instead of always drafting talent, draft guys that want to win, and I think that's where character comes in. I think that you need to build that from the top down, and that's why we're going to get into the conversation of the search now, but a Mike Gillis, Chris Pronger, maybe Sonny Mehta is not the guy. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this based on this conversation of analytics in the room first.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. There's a lot of directions that they could go, whether they said that they wanted to hire Gillis for the president of hockey ops, whether they feel like he can be a GM again, like he did with the Vancouver Canucks, because he did build that team that did go to the finals against the Boston Bruins. Let's not count that out. But then again, that is, 10 plus years ago, right? This is a different game. It has evolved. And whether they decide to go whatever direction they want, it's entirely up to them. But you need to have a president in place. You need to have someone overseeing everything, but the president needs to give the free rein to everyone else. It can't be like where it was Shanahan, trying to control everything of what Dubas was doing. The president needs to have faith in that GM and vice versa, and the owner needs to have faith in his department. Simple as that. And that's why I think Keith Pelly is willing to go all in and hire the best guys, where he could just sit back, even though he doesn't know a lick of cent of hockey. If that's the case, he's going to let the guys do their job. I hope that is the case. If it is going to be a guy like Sonny Mehta, which, it has been, it seems like it's gaining more traction right now. I know Friedman mentioned his name during Saturday night or Saturday headlines during the last Leaf game, and the fact that he brought up Sonny Mehta's name is kind of intriguing, really, because this is the guy that helped orchestrate the back-to-back runs for the Florida Panthers.
That no state tax.
That too, yeah. Let's not forget about that. Even going to Vegas, no state tax, Tampa Bay, you name it. But to sit here and say that Mehta is going to be heavily analytic driven is kind of a bit of a stretch. Yeah, Florida was a good possession team, but look at who they brought in to be competitive. Last year, their bottom six, they had guys that played a heavy game. And do you think that those guys really cared about analytics? No, those are the guys in the bottom six, like Noah Gadjevich, AJ Greer. Those are those physical, in your face guys that are willing to drop it every now and then to win a game. You could say that they have the skill in Barkov, Kachuk, Verhage, Reinhardt. Those are your skill guys, but your bottom six is compromised or compiled of those guys that can lay it out on the line. And like you mentioned, the culture change. With the Leafs, you have guys already that can instill that culture with Nyes, who was chirping Scott Lawton during that game against LA, which I found really hilarious. I don't know what was said, but did not sit well with Lawton. Nick Robertson showing a gutsy performance right now. Easton Cowan is jumping in, defending guys. These are the guys you want to build around. So I think if Meta does come into place, he should see that he has character guys that play with skill, but also have that heart and drive. If they do go a different direction, cool. But I think Meta right now, despite that whole bit of conflict of interest with his firm or with being a client of the firm leading the Maple Leafs GM search, something doesn't quite sit well, or it smells fishy, whatever you want to call it. Again, I just think that if this is the guy you want, cool. If not, then you got a bit of a search to go, but they already have at least 8 names, or they're going to have like a list of 8-10 names that they feel like are qualified. And they're going to go through I hope they're going to do their due diligence, but I think that with the guy in place, it should be someone that should have like an outside the box thinking, but is still relevant, that could be competitive in today's game.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumblings about these jobs too, right? Like, Dreger came out and said that Cassidy wouldn't want the head coaching job in Toronto if offered in the summer. There's a lot of speculation that the GM job itself is an unwanted job because, one, there's no real kind of idea of where this team is going to go. You don't know if Matthews is going to stay. You don't know if Nylander wants to stay. They both kind of hinted at the idea of a full rebuild would be kind of their ticket out. And then you've got, you got guys like Mike Johnson come back out and saying, no, Auston wants to be here. He wants, so there's a lot of unknowns around this organization right now. In saying that, I do think that Keith Pelly and MLSE needs to take a step back from it as well. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's where Gary says in the comments, that's where the president of hockey ops comes in, and that's where you have to kind of give that freedom to, which Shanahan never really had.
Trust. Yeah,
you want a guy to come in, and maybe I'm in the the 1% here thinking that Mike Gillis will come in and do a good job. Maybe he's not the guy, and maybe recycling and doing this coaching carousel and GM carousel and the old boys club isn't the way to go. And if that's the case, then yeah, a guy like Sonny Mehta is the guy that you want. And does this new firm kind of make things a little bit more
awkward?
Question mark?
Yeah,
awkward. Sure, but maybe that's exactly what they're going for. Maybe that's how they reel him in.
Maybe that's how they get that in, right?
Yeah,
try to build their case.
Now, from what I understand, they still need approval from the Florida Panthers to speak with them, which is another story in itself, being an Atlantic Division foe. But yeah, I think there's so many question marks around the franchise right now that nobody's really jumping at the idea of being the president of hockey ops for the Toronto Maple Leafs, because what direction are we going in? Who's going to have the final say? Who's my GM? Who's my head coach? Do I have the option of changing those if I see fit? I think for me right now, I do want to see a guy like Chris Pronger in there. I want to see Shane Doan stick around. I think Haley Wickenheiser has a lot to offer from a different perspective in terms of, she comes in with more of like the mental side of the game as well. Like she's shown that with her work with Nick Robertson. So
I was about to say those three, Doan, Pronger, and Wickenheiser, they were pros and icons in their respective right when they played, but they were on the tail end of their career while the new transition to the game was happening.
Yeah.
So they are very familiar with everything going on. That's why Doan came in being a part of, this franchise with the Maple Leafs, being like an assistant. And I feel like if Pronger is willing to take a big role or an office job, I mean, and again, I go back to what we mentioned last week about the possibility of him joining a front office job when he was on Leaf Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. He's open to it. I kind of feel like if you are willing to give a president or, higher role to one of Dome, Pronger, or Wickenheiser, all three are qualified in their own right because they know they've seen the direction of this game go. They know exactly, or have also played against younger players, and to know what kind of aspect it takes to win and the skill involved with it. So I feel like those three alone would do a fantastic job if they were elevated into a special role.
Yeah, I mean Gary says it right. It's not about bringing a 60 or 70-year-old guy again. It's about making sure that we have some new blood, some
yeah.
some
Also,
guys
glad
that
you
have been
brought up
around the game.
Malhotra too.
Yeah, Malholtra's another name. It would be interesting, especially if the Leafs get a top 5 pick, and we both have Caleb Malholtra at the top of our draft rankings as well. So that'd be an interesting one. I'm sure they'll wait and watch that play out as well. But yeah,
imagine that happening. Manny coming
interesting.
on board, and then even if the Maple Leafs lose out in the lottery, they still get a pick and manage to try and get Caleb. That'll be fun.
I don't think they do anything with the coach until they figure out what they're doing with the GM and everything, right?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
But anyways, the one thing with Berube right now is that he is saying that the Leafs need to stick to their game. Obviously, we talked off the top here about Luke Hames, who's having an unbelievable year with the Marlies, and then of course William Villeneuve, who hasn't seemingly got his shot, especially even with the Leafs being abysmal this season. I'm going to throw it to you because I know you're a big Villeneuve guy. Your thoughts on the call-up, the paper trail, the getting them up and around the atmosphere just to send them back down today?
Man, they're just playing with them. They're just toying with the fact that you're gonna. This even happened before and after the Olympics too, where I kind of felt like, the call up for Villeneuve was deserving because this is a guy that has kind of paid his dues in the AHL, where he's seemingly gotten better over time. And then basically you call him up, let him practice, and then you send him back down. Now, the Marlies did clinch a playoff spot. So I can understand if you're sending him down for the playoff run and everything like that. But there were ample chances and opportunities in the year where you could have gotten Villeneuve up. I mean, you're telling me that he was a better option than Philip Myers most of the season? Hell no. I mean, there are times where even Simon Benoit kind of looked up and down. There were a lot of injuries on the back end, and you were electing to go with those guys. You even gave Henry Thrun an opportunity. You gave Thrun an opportunity. You should have given Villeneuve a chance there too. And the thing that stuck with me and this is a quote from Berube by Lance Hornby tweeted, we're going to try and use everyone here down the stretch. We talked about some young guys coming up, probably and playing Hames and Villeneuve. We're focused on our game. The focus on our game part really strikes with me because what game? The fact that you get outshot 2-1 most nights for the last 2 to 3 months, the fact that you're out of a playoff spot, you're eliminated, and you think there's some hope, and you're going to try and play for pride right now. To me, the whole season's done. It's over. Why not give a chance to some of your younger guys that can fight for a spot next year, which I thought Villeneuve did a fantastic job during the preseason. I thought he looked really well. Luke Hames kind of needed to go through a little bit more development, needed to grow a little bit more, but he has popped off as of late. So for me, not giving those guys a great or an opportunity to play down this stretch is kind of a mistake. And I get that the Marlies are in the playoffs right now. If that's the case, fine. But if they weren't, trying to play on pride and not necessarily tank, but giving those inexperienced players an opportunity to learn and grow and make a statement for next year should be the priority. I don't care who you are. I think that Villeneuve would probably be better than 2 or 3 guys on the roster right now in that third pairing role. Hames would probably be a fantastic addition as a, not another Bobby McMahon per se, but in terms of that development curve or development path where he is a quick goal scoring winger. Those are 2 guys that are not necessarily going to be foundational pieces, but they can have a strong impact for your bottom half of the roster.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to be very clear here. Luke Hames right now 32 points in 63 games for the Marlies. I want to be very clear. I don't think the Marlies have a developmental issue. I don't think that the clubs that some of the prospects are playing for. We talk about Halinka is a guy that I think about.
Yes.
He's developed well especially as I believe he was a 4th round pick. The Leafs have a developmental issue.
Mm-hmm.
They have an issue with taking those lower end prospects, the guys that maybe not even lower end prospects. I mean, we talked about it with Nick Robertson. We talked about it with now Easton Cowan this season. We're talking about it with a guy like Logan Shaw, who's been incredible for the Marlies over the years. Other guys that Topi Niemela who decided to go back and play. We've had issues with developing those guys and getting them on NHL contracts and providing help for the big club.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the case now with Luke Hames and William Villeneuve. And I think we're going to look back on these 2 guys in some time here and question why they didn't get an opportunity with the Alex Steeves, another great example. Alex Steeves was a
look
huge
at him right now with Boston.
depth player for Boston this season. All season long, he's been a huge depth player.
Fraser Minter right now. You're telling me that
you couldn't have used him, and this is not a shot at Carlo.
It's hindsight.
But Fraser Minton in a first.
Mm-hmm.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And the fact that first wasn't top 10 protected pick, and Treliving said he tried to fight for it,
it was a bad tenure for Brad Treliving.
It was
bad tenure.
And again, I go back to I think it was Chris Johnson's article from The Athletic. I'll have to go back because I did write on that, where they went inside during that trade, and he said that he tried to fight for better, what's the word I'm looking for?
Better protection on the
better protection, better better protection on that pick. He wanted the top 10. Boston said, no, it's going to be top 5. You're telling me you're going to let your Atlantic Division rival dictate the price of this when this is a deep draft in the top 10? Like, these are not necessarily cornerstone pieces, but these are players that could instantly come in right away and make an impact.
They're going to make a difference, yeah.
And now you're sitting out 7th because you decided to win games and play and stick to the plan that you've tried to go with all year that has failed miserably. And now you're putting yourself in a bad spot with that pick. And it's just basically everything coming around full circle right now.
Regardless, though, you get a pick this year, you're out your next 2 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get a pick this year, you're out your next 2 first-round picks regardless. It was
unless the next year where it's like top 10. So again, if I recall, they have a pick, but they're going to have it in they won't have a pick in 2 of the 3 years. So they don't pick this year. They have their top 10 protected pick with Philadelphia next year. But if the Maple Leafs are still
sorry, they did acquire a first next year in the Nick Waugh deal.
Yeah, 2028. Yeah. Oh, yeah, next year. Yeah. So, but that is going to be a late first-round pick. But let's say the Leafs are bad, that 2027 pick for Philly gets bumped to 2028, I believe, regardless. So 2 of the 3 years, you don't have your own first-round pick.
Yeah, it's not ideal for a team that's trying to retool on the go.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, we talk about development and prospects for this team.
Yeah.
Harry Nancy and Hopkins were signed to amateur tryouts with the Marlies this past week. Nancy's had an incredible season this year.
Fantastic year.
A big development season. Again, not a necessarily a commentary at the Leafs organization in terms of how they develop players. And of course, we talk about Holinka and what he's done so far. He was named the Player of the Week in the playoffs this week as well. So, in saying that, in having that conversation about the development of this organization, what are your thoughts on them signing these three players to ATOs, getting them involved in the Marlies down the home stretch here? Obviously, playoffs is big for at the AHL level as well, but now they're getting the opportunity to kind of grow with this organization and see some maybe winning opportunities before they get to that big club, if they get to that big club.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because Nancy just is only 18 and Hawkins is 19, so they still got some. I think they have like about another couple of years of or 1 or 2 more years of eligibility in the O, right? But I digress with that. I think with Nancy too, I think he was one of the younger players in the draft last year, so there was a lot of potential for him to grow as a prospect. And I think we saw that this year. Yeah, the Owen Sound attack really weren't that great, but at one point, Harry Nancy was, a top 10, top 15 scorer in the OHL early on in the season. Like, he got off to a really hot start. Again, kind of cooled down, but you have to like what you have seen from him. And even though that, the attack got swept later in the playoffs, 56 points in 67 games this year, that he really basically doubled his production from the previous year. Again, a lot more room to grow, but I like the energy, like the playmaking. I feel like he could learn to be a little bit more greedy with his shot and goal scoring, but he sees the ice very well. Same with Hawkins too. I mean, average okay start with the Frontenacs, really popped off afterwards with the Guelph Storm. I mean, 13 goals, 25 points in 27 games, had a couple of highlight reel plays as well. I do think that with them getting this opportunity, it kind of jumpstarts a little bit of a youth movement for the Leafs where they feel like Nancy and Hawkins are worth jumping to the next level. I think Nancy's probably going to go back to the O because he is an 18-year-old. He still has more time there. But for Hawkins, maybe a different story. Holinka, definitely, I could see with the Marlies next year. His postseason run was basically, if the Edmonton Oil Kings made it to the second round, it would have been single-handedly because of Holinka. And I wrote an article about, his play and especially his hat trick that he took charge of in Game 4. And obviously the comments are going to be like, let's not, he's like, the comments are basically saying he's a 20-year-old in a 16, 19-year-old league, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I know, I get that. But this is a guy that only came over last year. It's basically still an adjustment period for him after one full season. And now with this being the second leading scorer, yeah, as a 20-year-old, but when you come over, you expect your older players to be veteran players and go-to players. For him to be an 80-point guy in a short span, yeah, as a 20-year-old, but let's say he had come over 2 years earlier. Let's say he was already in junior 2 years earlier. That could have been a huge impact on his development curve right then and there. But I think right now it's still just as good. I think it's still strong because of what he was able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. I mean, you could say that if he was 18, 19, putting up 80 points, yeah, that's going to be fantastic, especially after your D +1/+2 season. But right now, Holinka, I think, has that edge, and I think he's got a lot of pro qualities going for him right now. I think that if he does sign, or he is already under his ELC, so chances are he is going to make the jump to the AHL. I'm interested to see how he does because he had a really okay rookie season, really strong second season. Now going over and playing your first pro year, I want to see how big of a step he can take because he looked good during training camp and development camps. He looked good this year. He's got a lot of experience under his belt right now, and I think it's going to help him big time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I tend to agree. Like I said, I want to see more of these young guys come in and make impacts, whether they're deep round picks.
And we also haven't talked about Ben Danford either.
Yeah,
who's still in the playoffs too, and I think he's going to make a big jump next year.
I hope so. I think he was one of the last cuts in the in training camp this year as well.
He got a lot of looks with a lot of with the veteran players. He was with the veteran team.
Yeah, no, 100%. Gary, the problem is that Berube won't let anyone graduate because he doesn't trust young players, i.e., Cowan. I think that's some of it. I think the rest of it, is the organization. I've said it
Mm-hmm.
before. I think the organization's a major problem in terms of growing and developing and bringing these players up and giving them the opportunity. Nick
I
Robertson, given the injuries that he had early in his career, he still didn't get the same type of opportunity. Like even this season, it took a while before he was getting, you know, they were already out of it. And
comfortable.
he was getting the 15, 20 minutes, and look what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been able to add some more offense and production for the organization. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more to desire from this
Mm-hmm.
organization in terms of their development. I think we're going to get there, but we need the right people in place in terms of that GM search, that the president of hockey ops, and until that's figured out, this organization's just kind of on like a streamline of paralysis, basically, where we're just flatlining at this point. So I think
One other
that's where we're at.
point to that too. If you're one of those older coaches that has been in the league for a long time, or a hard nosed mentality, grinded out kind of play coach, north south game, kind of like Berube, Tortorella, a lot of these other guys too. If you have that mindset where you can't trust your younger players or players coming up, then you shouldn't be a coach in the NHL.
I was going to say it's time to go.
You should not be a coach in the NHL, because this is how the game develops. This is a revolving door and cycle. You can't rely on the same players nonstop. If you have younger players coming up that are hungry for opportunities, like Cowan, who's playing lights out, I think he's been one of the best Leafs since the post-Olympic break. Ever since Matthews went down, I think he's been the best Maple Leaf for them so far. If you're afraid to give a kid that much of an opportunity, then get out of here. Get out. Don't. You shouldn't be a head coach. Get a coach that isn't afraid to give players or reward them with the ice time, kind of like a Nick Robertson as well. He's still young, but he's being rewarded with his ice time right now.
Yeah, not in this day and age, right? Like it's a young guy's game. Gone are the days of the veterans completely running the show. Like for me, Cowan's showing the most heart. Maybe he hasn't been offensively productive the way that you want him to, but
the way he went after Zadorov, the way he's gone after Jackson Lacombe too. Like we both, you and me, we've watched like quite a bit of Safe as Death. Yeah, absolutely. We've seen quite a few London Knights games, you being close to them, watching Cowan on those championship runs, a Memorial Cup run. Yeah, he may not be the strongest kid, but he is scrappy. He is not going to let anybody fly.
Yeah. And it's I was actually talking to a guy today. It's the culture that the Hunters provide within the organization. It's a no bullshit mentality, right? And that's what the Leafs need. They need to come in and have a no bullshit mentality. Spike, you're 100% right. The Leafs need to take risks with their young guys. They need to see what they have organizationally. That way they can draft better to their needs. And what they need right now is a full overhaul. I think it's tear down at the pillars and find a way to move this team in the right direction. So,
and what better way than to bring in a coach? I kind of feel like I would like a Bruce Cassidy, but he's been in the league long enough that I think he should know that you got to give your kids a little bit of leeway. But this is why you go for a coach in the AHL, like a Manny Malhotra, who has seen that who has developed young players before, and can do that right now still.
Yeah, no, 100%. Peter, before we close out the episode, I want to do a quick buy or sell with you. Throw a few things at you here, maybe two or three, and I want to Yeah, I want you to give me a little quick buy or sell. So I'm going to kick it off. Not Leafs related. Under John Tortorella, the Vegas Golden Knights are 4-0. Heading into the playoffs, are you buying or are you selling on the Vegas Golden Knights under John Tortorella?
Like, I would probably buy for maybe a round or two, but that's it. I don't expect them to go far because I still don't trust their goaltending. I don't think it's going to get them far. Yeah, Tortorella, they've seen some success right now under Tortorella, but I still have questions about the goaltending, still have questions with their defense overall too. And even so, like, we're basically numb to this because of what we've seen with Mitch Marner in the postseason. Which Mitch Marner are you going to get in the postseason? Are you going to get the one that stood out against the Ottawa Senators or even the Tampa Bay Lightning? Or are you going to get the one that just basically ducks, not necessarily turtles, but gets very afraid of every little thing that comes his way, like he did against the Florida Panthers? So I'm going to sell.
Sonny Mehta as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, buy or sell?
I am going to go buy. I think this is the guy that, again, you want someone with experience. You want someone with an outside the box thinking. He has both of that, and he helped orchestrate back-to-back, as I mentioned before, back-to-back Cup champs with the Florida Panthers. Right? He and Bill Zito probably worked wonders to help build that team. So if he was able to do that, and even the second time around where you had a lot of guys in and out, and you help replenish that, I'm going to buy.
As of right now, the Buffalo Sabres are tied atop the Atlantic Division, looking at possibly taking a futures out on them to win the Cup. Buy or sell on the Buffalo Sabres atop the Atlantic Division?
I'm going to sell. I'm a little bit, I like the story that they've had. I'm glad they're in the postseason, and I think the fan base and the franchise deserves it. They played like an absolute unit down this stretch for the last 3-4 months, but you haven't been in the playoffs recently. There's a chance that they can build on the season and go far, absolutely, but I think that inexperience with this team may come back and be a deciding factor. And also it depends on who their first round opponent is going to be too, because it is an absolute logjam where it is neck and neck with a wild card team. So if they play, I believe, the Ottawa Senators, I think Ottawa beat them recently. And again, it's a regular season. Shouldn't look too much into regular season stats or records or anything like that, because everything's going to change. But let me just double check something here. Yeah, Ottawa beat them, and Ottawa beat them on April 2nd. So I don't know. I kind of feel like they have a lot of great pieces, but I think the inexperience is going to show.
Gary's got sell on Buffalo. He says Buffalo's crashing rough for the Jack Adams, however.
That is true. Yeah, they're slowly falling apart at the last stretch. And also, goaltending did not hold up for me during my semifinal matchup in fantasy hockey. So, yeah.
Sell hard. Sell hard. Okay, last one before we get going here. The Leafs have 5 games remaining in their season. Okay, Washington, the Islanders, Florida, Dallas, Ottawa. 2 of those teams, as of now, are must-win games. The Islanders and the Sens. Dallas being the only playoff team aside from the Sens currently in those last 5 games. Buy or sell the Leafs finish in a top 5 spot for the lottery?
This is tough because they also need a lot of help from, let's say, the Seattle Kraken. New York Rangers are coming up too, and they've looked hot recently. So if the Rangers and Kraken could win a few more games, and let's say the Maple Leafs go 1-4, I would buy. But this is very, very close because everything's separated by like 2, 3, or 4 points right now. I want to be optimistic. I want to say they get that pick. I want to say buy, but I would not hold my breath, and I may also sell.
Leafs need. I can't believe I'm saying this. Leafs have a must-lose game against the Florida Panthers coming up.
Well, let's face it, because the two Protas and Tom Wilson are on a line together tonight.
Yeah,
that is going to be an absolute unit, and you could tell that they're probably going to mash bodies around. They're going to hit everything in sight. I think that that's going to be a loss for the Leafs tonight. I think Washington really needs to bounce back after that Rangers loss. And hopefully with their playoff lives hanging in the balance, they need to win big time. And also, I think that Florida matchup is going to be key. I think that'll decide everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, well, that's all we got for today on episode 232 of the Sticks and Six podcast. Before we get going here, Peter, It's draft season, my friend. It is draft season. It's gonna be a lot of fun as we head into this. The draft in Buffalo this year as well. So that's gonna be a lot of fun for us. But what do you got as we head into draft season?
Yeah, if anyone wants to check out the THW NHL draft guide, it is absolutely free. The profiles, rankings, features, you name it, it is out on there. It is live on the website right now. Just came out with a recent profile on Maddox Dagenet. Forbes, you had your April rankings come out as well. I got another one in the works for a underrated Swede that isn't being talked about, but could be a really good value second round pick right now. So tune in for that. Got that. Probably going to be a lot of more Leaf prospect writing. Whatever happens with that fifth pick, I'm going to be writing stuff about that to see what can happen. But let's hope that it does. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, I'm going to have to looking for some ideas.
Yeah, top 96 for April was what just came out this morning. So if you're into draft rankings, if you're into prospects, make sure you check out my top 96 for April over at the Hockey Writers. As always, it's going to be a fun season. Playoffs are going to be a lot this year. No Leafs, but we'll have a lot to talk about over the playoff season. We'll have a lot to talk about as we get into the draft. If you tune in weekly like the guys do in the comments here, we appreciate you. We continue to try and give back to wherever we can. And as always, it's been a fun time talking Leaf hockey this season. 5 games to go in this abysmal season, but surely the Leafs will be making some news over the next coming weeks. With that's all we got here for episode 232 of the Sticks and the Six podcast over at the Hockey Podcast Network. A ton of great shows for Peter, myself, and of course our friend Alex Hobson. That's all we've got here for this week of Sticks and the Six. Until next week, guys, go Jays go. Go Jays go.
It's already over.